Well, welcome to a special bonus edition of the
Our
Story World podcast.
our first bonus edition. I am excited, Steve.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And what we're talking about is that we are the YouTube. Wait, we are the Story World podcast
Yeah.
is finally on YouTube. Yes,
Yes. We've been saying it
yes.
since day one, and it has finally happened.
It has finally happened. In other words, Steve has got his lazy button gear and got episodes uploaded. So,
So, for
um,
people who have stuck around with us from the beginning, not only have you been able to listen to our episodes once, but you can now go and re-listen to them and watch us as we deliver.
Hey, yes, exactly right. And one of the things we mentioned in a podcast, actually the one that launched today, the one out today as we're recording this, um,
And
is like part of like this whole, culture that we've built around this podcast, believe it or not, is the video background that we use, and nobody's even gotten to see it.
yeah,
Like it's the same thing ultimately that's in our podcast artwork, but like it's a little bit different because it's kind of made for the video here. And so I'm really just excited for people to see that because I think it's pretty cool.
absolutely. Yeah. It's really exciting that it's just different knowing that you can see us now. It's more like we're talking, with you and it can really look at you. And so
Yeah.
just really fun to be on YouTube, a different platform, just to kind of put us out there more and really thank everyone who's stuck around this long. We pretty much figured out that we have about 9 consistent listeners with us every episode. And so it's been really
Yeah.
great having you stick with us around this long and to continue into the future. Now the current plan is,
Yeah.
yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Oh, I was gonna say I don't think me and Alex even know 9 people. So
Yeah.
so I can
Together, we don't know 9 people.
I don't think together we know 9 people. So, I mean, we probably can
That's great.
identify, 2 or 3 of you who are listening to us on a regular basis, but the other 6 or 7 of you, we're not really sure where you come from. So thank you
Thank you
for
very much.
joining us. We
Yes.
hope through YouTube that we're going to have some others to help to join you in listening to the podcast. But thank you for your loyalty. We really appreciate it. So
Absolutely. Now we're still gonna be putting out episodes, of course, on Spotify. Right now, I think there's about a half a dozen, maybe even more episodes on YouTube right now. Kind of what the time frame is, not a specific time frame, but we'll be releasing all our past episodes on YouTube, and then once we're caught up, pretty much because Steve and I kind of film these episodes in advance. So once one episode comes out, we should have time to prep it for YouTube. And if the YouTube video doesn't get released the day that the podcast gets released that week, it might be a day or two later. But you should see the YouTube videos being posted at the same time as the Spotify episode or podcasting episode. So feel free to listen to whatever medium that you want to.
yeah, and I will say that we are available wherever podcasts can be downloaded. So not just
Yes,
Spotify.
exactly.
We're on all the different platforms. Obviously, we're in the Apple library, the Android library. We are everywhere that you can go. And me and Alex were just talking about this. I mean, as far as right now, by the way, we've released a podcast. This is just kind of some cool statistics. We've released a podcast for the last 25 weeks in a row,
Yes.
um,
Woo.
which is really really sweet. And I mean, how cool is that, right? I mean, most people don't do that. And our current plans are to release this to keep releasing this podcast at least until we die. Depending on our
Yes.
backlog,
Yeah.
if one of us dies, we may actually be able to go a little bit posthumous as well. So, so, so
Yeah,
what?
it depends on the time of death. If one of us goes out next week, you're not going to have many episodes to work with. Okay. But if the good Lord gives us at least another 40, 50, 60 years, we might have some left over for you and your grandchildren
What
to
we're trying
enjoy.
to say, what we're trying to say is as long as podcasts, Steve and Alex are all available, we should be releasing an episode every
Yes.
week because there's an endless amount of stories to talk about. And maybe I'm a big dreamer, maybe I'm a crazy guy, but I kind of see this podcast being like a really big thing with a cool culture built around it in the future. And if that doesn't happen, whatever. It's still really fun to get together and talk about this stuff week after week. But I do think it would be really cool if just an awesome culture developed around the storytelling thoughts that we have. So
Yeah.
here
That's
we are for
kind
the
of
long haul.
That's kind of what our kind of dream, I guess you can say, has been from the beginning. Is we really think that we have something great here. I mean, I think just the 9 people that are listening every single time to us can attest to that. Where you guys keep coming back because either you're getting something from it or you find it interesting. just the aspect of on storytelling, whether it's specific methods of how to tell a story, how it's applicable to our life, having fun and just talking about fun movies that come out and talking about that. It seems like that there is something here. And so even if it is just you nine people out there or whoever else is listening, if it's just you and it stays that way, then we'll keep doing this. And we have a fun little group here.
Yeah,
Um,
I totally agree.
but yeah, so like Steve said, we plan on still releasing our typical episode every week, and we do have played around with some ideas of doing some fun little events come up as more people come and we get a little bit more popularity, I guess you can say, and maybe doing maybe some live videos and having some fun events going on. But as of right now, sticking to the game plan. And we're still going to have our kind of similar formatting where Steve and I will have our movie nights. We'll talk about movies. And what we really want to do with those is have it be fun, talk about the movies and kind of get into a little bit of stuff going on with whether it's an old movie or a new movie that's come out, but kind of how to apply those stories and things that we caught on in those movies to apply it to how you want to tell your stories or how it applies to your business or your branding or however it applies to you in life. And so that's kind of our goal with those.
Yeah, absolutely. I prefer that. It's fun to talk about the movies for sure, but we realize that you guys are here to actually learn a little bit too while having fun. So it's cool to be able to take that back. I mean, if we're not, I mean, these are ultimately these stories that are being told are for our entertainment, but also as storytellers, there's a lot we can learn from them. So we're going to try to do our best to not let those lessons go by. It's like you probably never thought about a lesson that you could take away from a movie about Nicolas Cage playing Nicolas Cage, but yet there was one, right? It's
No-
about
and,
being yourself. So
and then it led into the divine council of heaven.
we
So,
talked about fallen angels and from Nick Cage to fallen angels.
so
What other podcast can you get from Nick Cage
you
to
can't,
fallen
you can't.
angels?
The only
Yeah.
podcast you could is if Nick Cage made a podcast, because I'm sure it's somewhere along the lines it would deviate to fallen angels. It's just guaranteed with Nick Cage.
Wow.
It would be bound to happen.
He did play in Left Behind, so it
Exactly.
could happen.
Exactly.
100%. Well,
But aside from those
very
fun
good.
ones, of course, the first several episodes, Steve and I really just kind of give an introduction about us and kind of what we do, what our passion is for writing, our different processes for writing, and Steve with his business. And so very much, even though we tackled a couple really cool, interesting, and a little bit, deeper subjects, for the most part, it was very introductory to us and to this podcast. One thing that we are really looking for, I don't know what it is, but Steve and I were talking the last couple weeks. We've just talked about different subjects and it just like, bam, that's an episode we can talk about. And so I think we have some really great ideas for podcasts coming up that you can really sink your teeth into and get a little bit more into the knit and grit of what, everyone wants to know. And that's to learn more, to study more. I know that everyone, or at least a couple people that I talked to, said they really liked the series. We had a part one, part two, part three about a certain topic, and so maybe a little bit more of that. So definitely, Steve and I want to get into a little bit more of the, shall we say, nerd aspect of getting into some of these story subjects, and I think that would be really beneficial to both Steve and me, and as well as everyone listening.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100%. That's good. I couldn't say it better myself,
Awesome.
so I won't.
Well, there you go. I don't even know why there's two of us in this podcast.
Maybe there should just be one.
Maybe this is
Are we breaking up right now after we just said that we would do this until after we die?
the YouTube is on hold for the momentarily. So we thought it'd be kind of fun, just to kind of wrap this up and share in the memories that Steve and I are gonna share with you what our favorite podcasts have been, which episodes.
Yeah.
So I noticed that I have one more than Steve. I told Steve 3. I cheated. I made 4. So I'll go ahead first with mine. That way we end on a good alternating note there. So the
Sure,
first
do
one
it.
for me that I picked out, not in any particular order, but I really liked our episode on introducing children to stories. I think I
Mm,
really liked that one because it was one of our first very serious subjects. I think everyone
mhm.
agreed that what you do with, you have a child's mind in your home, your children, or if you're a teacher, how do you instruct that child and how do stories, relate to that child's life? And if you go back, listen to that podcast, stories have a huge role in a child's life. And so I think that was just a really awesome one where Steve and I got to, we had 7 points that we tackled, but then we also just kind of, learned ourselves talking through that and going through the process of what do you do with children and how do you teach them stories and encourage them. So that was a really fun episode that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, with 4 kids in my home, it was kind of one that I needed too, you know? I mean, I'm, even as interested as I am in this stuff, unfortunately, it's well, I actually do this pretty bad. You know, I'm actually really not good about, introducing my children to stories, and so I need to get better about it. So it was kind of a kick in the pants
Mm,
episode for me, to be honest. So
cool.
Um, the first one that as I was going through the list that I identified, is the world building jam that we had. And honestly, from I just love the concept of world building, and so anytime that I can like talk about that with anyone who will listen, is a super fun time. I don't, I'm maybe don't have as good a memory as Alex, so I don't exactly remember all
Oh,
the specifics of how we what we specifically talked about in each and every episode. But I really did enjoy talking about world building, and I think it's one of the most important parts of any story, both in fiction and in nonfiction. And I mean, I literally do world building in nonfiction every single day of my life. I'm writing every single day and speaking, in various forms every single day, to help build a world around myself and so or around my company, I should say. And so it's important to me. And I think that was a really fun episode because we got to cover it from both angles. So
that's awesome. That's cool. I noticed that my next one is kind of Steve's next one too. So, I put down the backstory series. If you listen to those or are familiar with them and can recall them, that was our kind of first series that we did. It was a part one, part two, part three. I think
yeah.
part one was on the importance of backstory in fiction writing. Part two was how to what does backstory mean for marketing and in your company? And then the third one was applying that to like you and your life and branding yourself and what is your backstory and how do people see you and what's important there. I really like that one. I think I hope that every episode we've had so far has been applicable in some way to people in their lives. But I think this one was really sums up really well what we want to do in this podcast. And that's kind of take a portion of what Steve does in life, what I do in life, kind of mash that together and then say, hey, how does that actually apply to you? And what can each of us do in our life to apply this to ourselves? So I thought that
Yeah.
was a great series.
Yeah, 100%, and I'll just dive into my next one by capitalizing
Yeah,
on
go
that
for it.
since
Yep.
for me, it was the backstory importance and specifically marketing backgrounds.
Hmm.
And the reason is because I can't think of something that has helped me more in my business than learning how to tell stories. And in fact, I was just, sharing with a group the other day that I was invited to speak to, and I talked about this and because it's so important to learn how to craft stories for the purpose of making people or take action in the context that I was doing it. It came down to asking people to do business with you, and it's like, yeah, like you're the stories that you tell, the world. It goes back to the world building as well. The world that you build around yourself, you with the stories that you tell, can have a real impact on what makes people actually buy from you and take action and become interested in what you have to say. So
Hmm.
that was one of my favorite episodes for that reason because it's the topic I'm maybe most nerdy about as it relates to marketing, and so we got to dive into it pretty deeply in that one. So,
Awesome. Yeah, that was just a great series. And I learned a lot during that episode too. Anytime Steve opens his mouth, I learned something.
oh man, well, I don't know about that. Every time Steve opens his mouth, what he wants is for meat to be in it. So then,
Yes.
anyway,
Yes, absolutely.
so I will say too. I think actually you said that was the first series we did. Actually, it's the only series we did, unless I
Yes. No,
getting something.
that is true.
And we talked about wanting to do more, so I think we have plans to do a lot more of those series where we span a topic across multiple episodes and really dive deeper into it. So I think we're thinking more about that. So
And Steve and I are only two minds. And so the people that we do know who
yeah.
listen to this, if you like something specifically, like tell us and say, hey, this was great so that we know. Or if you think that we're kind of slacking in this area or you want to see something new, let us know because we want to be able to deliver content that actually applies to you and is interesting.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, this is a little bit of an aside here, but, something that in terms of future vision for the podcast, we don't really have a big enough audience to justify this yet, but one of my favorite kinds of content to create is Q&A.
Mm,
So I would
absolutely.
love for people to be able to submit some questions and us be able to cover those questions in episodes of the podcast. So I'll just say right now, I don't have a special email address set up or anything yet. As of right now, you can always email Steve at northmacservices.com, spelled like it sounds, North Mac MAC services.com. You can just email there if you want, you know, submit some questions if you happen to come across this episode and have them. Maybe we'll have a little bit more formal email address or something for that in the future. But for now, you can always do that. And if you have questions, we'd love to tackle them on upcoming episodes. So
Yeah, absolutely. We have plans for growing more and, getting a little bit more formal, as kind of Steve said, with an address and maybe even some more social media stuff, but just kind of
yeah.
growing naturally and taking our time with it. Awesome. Um,
Yep.
my next favorite one, I picked a fun one because I loved it, was talking about the Prestige. That was a long episode. I want to say it was about an
Yeah.
hour and a half, and I loved every bit of it. That was the only
Yep.
one where we talked about a movie where we walked from it from beginning to end, almost like scene by scene, I felt. And I think that
Oh, yeah.
attests to how perfectly made that movie is.
Mhm.
And so I just, one, it was fun. And two, I think it's a great episode. Like, if you really are interested in storytelling, just a great recap of a great movie to just wrap your mind around, and how a great story can be told.
Yep. 100%. I almost picked that one.
Yeah.
But
I
because I did,
limited you
it
to
was,
three.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, you did. You limited me to three and you cheated. So look
That
at you.
actually did.
No, it's okay. All right. So, for me, my last one is it was a question that we answered: is reading fiction just a waste of time? And I like this one because I feel like we had again. I'm trying to remember exactly through what we talked about, but I'm pretty sure on this one we might have had a couple like not. Like we certainly didn't have an argument, but maybe we had like some competing thoughts or some thoughts that might have been in tension, but both really, really helpful. And it was just good because like obviously I think fiction is an incredible thing, but it certainly can become a waste of time
Mm,
if you're just using it as a way to sort of escape from life and never
yeah.
using it as something to sort of you know, learn from or whatever. So I think there's a good healthy balance there that people should have between fiction and nonfiction. And for me, although I realize that reading fiction is really not a waste of time, sometimes I still get into the mindset that it is, and and just
Mm,
you know, it's like I'll start to open up a fiction book, and then it's like, oh, but I could be reading this other nonfiction book that I needed to finish, and I'll learn more from it. And so that's not fair for me to do, right? I really
yeah.
should allow myself more time reading fiction and engaging with fiction than I do. So
It's funny because
it's one
I'm
of my
the
favorite
opposite.
episodes because I still need that kick in the pants.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the exact opposite. So, like, I'll read fiction all day long, and then, I enjoy reading nonfiction. But I have to purposely set aside my fiction reading and bring in the nonfiction. So it's
Funny, so
funny.
crazy.
My last one, my fourth one, is one of our earlier ones, Alex and Steve's writing process. I like
Yeah.
this one. It has a little nostalgia to it because that was, I don't know if it was our fifth or sixth one, but it was one of our earlier ones.
Mhm.
And it was just fun that early on getting together and just kind of, because Steve and I didn't even really know too much about each other's writing processes
It
and
was actually
how
our
we get
12th
into it.
one, by the way, our
Was it that
12th
long?
one. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, was it that far along? Wow. So
Yeah.
still kind of early in the grand scheme of things, but I
Oh,
guess
yeah.
we're a little on then. Probably because we filmed it in the second month, maybe because we filmed a little bit ahead.
Oh, maybe.
That's the
Yeah,
excuse I'm going with. Anyway,
sure.
that was a really fun one. Just kind of understanding how each of us do things, and I think that was a really kind of helpful one too, just to kind of show our writing processes and how we how we do our work. So that was a fun one.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Because it's so different. I wanted to really get into how people write from a fiction standpoint, and you helped clarify that for me, so it was good.
Absolutely. Well, I think that sums up this bonus episode. I hope
Yep.
everyone enjoyed it and is excited as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't forget, go to we don't have a fancy URL. You sort of have to have like 1,000 subscribers, which let's just say we're like 996 away from. But once you have 1,000 or so subscribers, you can get some advanced features like setting your own channel URL and some stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think you know, we have any unrealistic expectations. But we would like to obviously see this thing grow as fast as possible just because we want this message to spread. I mean, you know, right now there's certainly nothing, you know, no direct like financial profit or anything that me and Alex get from this podcast. I mean, if anything, we spend time and money on it, because it's a lot of fun for us. But we'd still like to be able to talk with as many people as possible about stories, right? So let's get it out
Absolutely.
there. Let's share it with people. Let's make it discoverable and light this thing on fire.
Yeah, and if you look up Story World on YouTube, it should have the same banner and everything. So yeah, look it up and we listen to episodes or watch the new ones that come out. So thank you for sticking around with us and looking forward to more.
Absolutely.